You didn't build a great business by being timid. And now it's time to get back to business the same way you built it, with passion. UBS is here with the resources and knowledge you need today. We've weathered the storm with business owners for more than 150 years, and what we've learned can help you right now, not just for your own personal goals, for your business. With insights and strategies to help you get up and running with the focus and determination that made you a success in the first place. It's a matter of asking the right questions and speaking with the right people who can help you find the solutions to move your business forward. With UBS, the possibilities are endless, but the focus is always on you, your family, and your business. Why not benefit from all of the knowledge and resources available to you from UBS? Few people could have built what you built. Proceed with passion.
Welcome everyone from wherever you are logging on. I'm Shirley Leung and I'm a columnist with the Boston Globe. This is the Leadership Lunch series sponsored by UBS. This is today's session is on entrepreneurship and innovating in tough and uncertain times. We'll be in conversation today with Easy Cater co-founder and founder and CEO Stefania Mallet, Drift co-founder Elias Torres, and Flair Capital co-founder and general partner Michael Greeley. The pandemic has upended business and life as we know it, but there are special challenges for the innovation economy, one that is built around being in the same room or even the same table to create the next big thing. Whether you launched a business or you're thinking about it, you'll hear war stories and advice from three people who are in the trenches of running a business during COVID. But before we begin, we're going to hear some remarks from our sponsor. Here is James Jack, head of the UBS Owners Client Segment.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of UBS Global Wealth Management and the Boston Globe, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And it's my sincere hope that you and your loved ones are safe and healthy. Like Shirley said, my name is James Jack. I'm the head of the UBS Business Owner Client Segment, where I actively work with UBS financial advisors and our business owner and entrepreneur clients to support them as they start, grow, and ultimately exit their businesses. I'd like to thank today's guest speakers today, Stefania Mallet, Michael Greeley, and Elias Torres, and finally thank the Globe for their continued work and dedication to the city and the Commonwealth and our partnership on this 6-part series. It's hard to believe that we're already 5 in. UBS has a long tradition of more than 150 years in Boston with our lineage from Payne Weber, and throughout that history, UBS financial advisors have worked with individuals, business owners, and entrepreneurs to help improve their lives and help them leave legacies that matter. As the head of our Business Owner Client Segment, I'm particularly excited about today's topic around innovating in tough times and the future of entrepreneurship. The innovative thinking of entrepreneurs have helped us tackle so many of our problems, and I've no doubt that the same applies to this pandemic. So again, thank you all so very much for joining us today. Be well, and Shirley, let's start the program.
Thank you, James. All right, so we're going to do things a little differently today. During the first half, I'm going to talk to Stefania, Elias, and Michael separately, and because each has a unique story to tell. And then everyone will come together in the second half of the panel, answer a few more questions from me, and also questions from the audience. And we've received some great pre-submitted questions, and if anyone in the audience wants to ask a question during the panel, please use your Q&A function during the Zoom. The chat function has been turned off. So first up is Stefania. Is this going to work? Oh, here you are. You're on mute. Unmute.
Not anymore. Not anymore. I'm visible and I'm loud.
So Stefania is a serial entrepreneur and currently the co-founder and CEO of Easy Cater, the world's largest marketplace for corporate catering. And so I want to ask you, Stefania, the pandemic has forced a lot of people to work from home, right? And it would seem that COVID would make corporate catering obsolete. But you have found employers now view kind of the office catered lunch, not so much as a perk, but a critical part of maintaining a safe workplace during a pandemic. Can you explain that a little bit for us?
I can. This sounds like an advertisement for Easy Cater, so thank you. This actually, you're right, corporate catering actually became kind of illegal in some places, right? You're not supposed to have meetings, and that's what we were focused on. There's two ways that you want to bring food into an office. One is for meetings, sales calls, training, any kind of meetings. The other is just to feed all of us lunch. And the meetings suddenly became less of a thing, except for essential workers, where it turned out they do still get together. And so our corporate catering does still work there. More than that, though, people who do need to go into their workplace, whatever it be, a warehouse, an office, a secure military facility, any of the places where you really have to go there, they need to eat, and they don't want to leave the office workplace. They don't want to spend more time in an elevator than they have to. They don't want to go stand in line at a restaurant, but they love the food that restaurant will create. We want to keep the restaurant alive. So we created a product called Relish, which allows individual employees, with a subsidy or without from the employer, to place their order, and then we aggregate all those deliveries, and in a single big delivery, the restaurant will bring the food neatly packaged. One package will say Shirley on it, one package will say Stefania, one package will say Michael, and so on. And it arrives, and it's safe. The employers think of it as a safe way to feed their people. And employees greatly prefer this over, it's the kind of amenities. In old days, we used to have trays of food in the kitchen and all that. You can't do that anymore. But safe lunch, you still need to eat.
Well, how quickly did you come up with this idea, your company?
Magic was done in the month of March. We had been prototyping this Relish product beforehand, but in March we said, forget the prototype. We need to make this go everywhere. And we created other things very fast. Part of the magic was something we called Feed the Front Line, where we rapidly made it possible for hospitals who may not have worked with us before to accept food. And hospitals were massively locked down, but we got through all their security measures and said, if people bringing food from this restaurant, will you let them in to feed your frontline workers? And we got a way for anybody who wanted to just give us some money that went straight into feeding these hospitals. So that was another piece of magic that came up pretty fast. It's still there. And as the front lines are getting pressured again, feed the front line. Come back to easycater.com/feedthefrontline and help your frontline workers. So these things went fast. We thought of them. We rapidly moved into production because we knew that the world needed it, and we needed it, frankly, to stay alive. Mm-hmm. Right? The business that we were doing primarily was suddenly shrinking quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. So how is your company doing overall then?
Pretty well. We did a big layoff, which the Globe reported on. We had to do a shift in focus on, and we considered whether we should pivot. Like people said, well, why don't you go to consumers, right? Why don't you set things up where you deliver the food to a residential complex, an apartment complex or something? And we thought, we get it about business workers. We get it about the requirements of delivering food into a professional setting, whether it's an office or a work warehouse or a hospital or whatever. Let's not turn our backs on that. Let's double down. We did not pivot at all. And as a result, we were the world's largest marketplace for corporate catering before. I am quite confident we are still that. We have been, if you look at our growth since the third or fourth week of March, which was the lowest point, we're coming back at a faster clip then we were growing through 2019. It's very impressive how quickly we're climbing back up as workplaces are opening up and as we're finding the essential workplaces that never shut down. So there's quite a lot of opportunity for us, and we seem to be leveraging it pretty well.
So what has been the hardest part of running a business during a pandemic?
I miss my peeps. I miss my peeps. I mean, I have a nice house, right? We all have a nice place where we're lucky, right? We're all folk who have a place to live, and I miss my people. I miss the feeding, the emotional feeding that I get from seeing them. But, you know, we're learning a lot about how to be creative, how to be collaborative, how to feed each other emotionally, even remotely. And it's opened doors for us. We've decided to open up to many parts of the United States. We're allowing remote work in many, many parts of the United States. Now, you can't just open in every state. You have to know what the laws are there, the employee laws. You have to register with the state. You have to do a bunch of stuff to get ready. So we're not in every state, but we're in many states, and suddenly it gives us a lot more hiring pools, gives our employees more opportunity. Pandemic makes them want to go home. So suddenly, it's actually opened a lot of doors for us.
That's great, Stefania. Thank you for sharing your story. And we're going to see you later. We're going to see you again. But next, we're going to hear from Elias Torres. Hi.
Hi, Shirley.
Good to see you. So Elias is the co-founder and chief technology officer of Drift. It's a Boston startup that uses artificial intelligence to power sales software. Think of chatbots answering questions about something you're trying to order online. And the company was recently named by Forbes magazine as one of the 50 most promising American AI startups. Congratulations. You must be really busy, right?
Yeah.
So Stefania just explained how ezCater did not need to pivot and stuck with its knitting, so to speak. So what did the pandemic do to your business?
Yeah, I think the pandemic did a lot of things for us, right? As you mentioned, we are helping businesses accelerate revenue. And that is very important. It's something that David and I have, been noticing for a while, right? That businesses depend on the influx of prospects coming into that website, but they didn't have many ways to interact with them. And so the pandemic made it even clearer to everyone that we needed Drift's technology on websites to be able to accelerate conversations. And so at the very beginning, there was a stressful time when all businesses just kind of like paused and they try to figure out and assess the situation. So there was a lot of freezing, especially with small businesses. We tend to be more B2B high tech. So in like annual plans and larger companies. So those companies were doing really well in the sense that they were not going to stop and change anything at that moment. They kind of were a little more thoughtful. And so what it forced us was to do is to focus on our existing customers, focus on our product and our investment, and making sure that we're solving the right problems for them. But the reality is that we got completely accelerated into the digital transformation to virtual selling. And that has been good for us, right? Because that's what we've been advocating and supporting since the day that we founded the company.
So yeah, you hit, your timing was pretty good, right? Everything has gone virtual. There's not a lot of in-person selling or of anything like that. So that's great. So so I asked Stefania this question as well. So what has been the hardest part of running a business during a pandemic?
I think Stefania and I are similar. I think she might be an extrovert like me. There's an article in Business Insider today, and she gave me the goosebumps when she said, "I miss my people," right? And that's really at the core. Like the energy that allows me to run through walls is when I'm around the team. The energy that we can feel. Our office was just a thriving place, just bustling. Everybody's just walking, meeting, noise, music. Random groups meeting, everywhere throughout the office in any open space. So it's really exciting, and I really miss that. I think that it's like she said it so well. It's a big learning for me of as a leader, how do we help feed people, right, emotionally, right? We're in a marathon, and it's kind of hard when we don't see each other. We don't see each other's faces, and we only see who we can see in a Zoom call at that moment. And so it's really difficult, and we're really learning how to talk, spend time, and create different moments, little by little, right? To prepare us for a long winter coming ahead. We have to really think about the surge, be mindful of the rest of the country, and try to stay at home as much as possible, right?
So is your office closed or is it open? Are people going back in?
No, we haven't gone back in since March 10th. I think we made a decision at midnight the other night. I was just coming from a trip and we said, it's real. We have to close this. And so we want the earliest offices to close in Boston. And we haven't gone back and we have no plan. I mean, our reality is that we're probably going into a virtual first. It's really, ironing out the details on that. But the reality is we have to support a remote workplace. There's no way we go back. This is the new normal, right? And when we surveyed the company, I think probably over 75% of the team said, we would like to come in at least like 2 days a week, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a need for us to see each other and spend time, but we're not going to be able to plan any of that kind of meeting time for a while. So we got to stay patient and keep finding, sometimes we'll go for a walk or meet someone for coffee, but it's like a little bit here and there, depending on people's families and risks because they might have parents that are high at risk or something like that. So we have to be really careful with everybody.
Right. So you made reference to David, and David, this is David Cancel, right? Your co-founder, and you and David are among the 2% of VC-backed startups led by Latinx founders. And you wrote 2 pieces in Fast Company this year, one in April and one in June, about how tech companies approach diversity and inclusion. I'm just going to quote a little bit from your April piece. You wrote how tech companies often, quote, approach diversity and inclusion like dental hygiene. Without proper care and attention, small problems become bigger and more painful ones. And instead of treating causes at the root, we try to fill vacancies with diversity hires as if they were cavities. So you wrote this in April before the killing of George Floyd and the racial reckoning that followed. And in June, you wrote another piece, and it was more, you were reflecting on how you were treating or how you were dealing with Black employees. And so, and what more you could do to make them feel more welcome at the company and in the sector. And so, we've known for a long time that tech has had a problem with recruiting and advancing women and people of color, in particular Black and Latinx employees. I mean, how can this sector really get serious about inclusion now?
I think that it's really, this is one of the most difficult things I've faced in my life, really. Like I said, in my second article, I was reflecting on my own learnings in naivete between thinking that Latinos and Blacks we had the same exact problems, right? We can relate with one another. We understand each other really well, but did not have the history or the background and the differences in how we're treated, right? And the different stereotypes that apply to each other. And so it's been a huge learning. I think that we're becoming more aware, but it's still a long road ahead, right? I mean, the problems that we have are like what akin to dental hygiene, because it's a complete process that has to be looked from top to bottom, right? For how we eat, when we eat it, temperatures, how we clean, how often we go to the doctor. Is the same as with diversity, right? It's not just about, I made a few hires and this is my percentage, right? But it's how do we onboard people? How do we attract? Where communities we participate? What universities we go to? Remote, who do we go and reach out? Without the network, I've said this before, like Latinos and Blacks, we're kind of invisible, right, to tech America, right? And so we have to figure out how do we be present. And that's something that I've been going through, a rethinking of my purpose for Drift is really to become the new face of a diverse corporate America. And by David and I showing and being one of those top 2%, we can show to people that we are as capable as anybody else, that everyone is capable, especially in America, to reach their American dream and build a successful company, right? And let investors know that we can gain the experience, we can understand the market, we can build the tech, and we can build the great companies, right? That are pillars to our communities like Boston, San Francisco, and any part of the US.
Mm-hmm. In your, can you talk a little bit about your second piece? Because I thought you, in Fast Company, you gave some really good advice, because the topic of, diversity and inclusion, and it's huge, and so and almost paralyzing, right?
It is paralyzing, and that's what I was trying to focus. I took 4 steps to myself, right? And the first one is, we got to stop judging. I think that, sometimes I write on LinkedIn about something about diversity, and then I forget to mention a specific group, and then I'll get crucified for that. And like, we got to stop judging one another. I think that what we really need to do is find the people that are raising their hand, the want to help, and they might not know, right? So stop the judging, first thing. Second, right, it's important that we educate ourselves. It's really been fascinating for me in the journey of watching a lot of Black films that teaching me about the history of this country. Things as an immigrant, when I came 17 years old, I came in 1993. So it's like, and I was young too, so I'm not aware of everything that has happened. So education is extremely important. And I've been doing that with a lot of friends of different ethnicities. I've been recommending the films that I've been watching, and they've been coming back to me and saying, wow, I did not know that, right? And everybody has the wrong stats. It's just so much misinformation out there that is really helpful when we watch more things together and we discuss them, right? So I think that that's been changing a lot of the topics in my conversations during the pandemic with friends and coworkers. The other one is to pick a lane, right? It's like really hard to do everything. It's overwhelming. We have to be watching for our mental health right now. There's a lot in our minds. There's a lot of things that we're trying to resolve, a lot of things outside of our control. And so, and I feel it, there's this thing in me sometimes that I don't want to sound a hypocrite. I don't want to be I'm an imposter syndrome too, right? I feel it. And so it's like, we can't be worrying about, I can't help that person. I can't help that person. I didn't help that one. I helped this one, but I didn't help the other. And this problem, like I said, it stems from children, education, health, schooling, housing, food, to like opportunities in school, opportunities, counselors, entrepreneurship opportunities in high school, college, hiring, promotions, path, businesses, investment, entrepreneurial opportunities. Such a long journey. And so we can't help in every case. I can't help everyone, but I'm doing my best. And I think I picked my lanes, and I'm just focusing on them. And we can't worry about what everybody else is saying, right, and hurting and trying to hurt us, right? So we want to help America really unify and show that we are a great melting pot and make that happen. But it's everybody, I would love everybody to pick their lane and stop judging and educate ourselves, right?
Well, thank you, Elias. We're going to hear from you later, and so don't go too far. Next up is Michael Greeley.
Shirley, hi.
Michael. Hello. So Michael is a serial venture capitalist. He is currently co-founder and general partner of Flair Capital. He was the past chairman of the New England Venture Capital Association, and Michael's specialty is healthcare. So money is one of the biggest hurdles to entrepreneurship. And so where is money flowing to these days, and where is it not?
In the context of this conversation around COVID, I think there was great anxiety in the spring that the spigot was going to be turned off or largely turned off. And now that we're 7-8 months into it, it's amazing how robust the funding activity has been. Third quarter was almost $40 billion of venture investments in the quarter, which puts us on pace for a spectacular year. So I think it'd be easy to say that almost all sectors have been benefited by that. Obviously, ones that have been uniquely exposed to COVID, travel, restaurants. There are certain very specific areas that have really struggled. As you said, I help run a healthcare venture fund. Healthcare is on fire right now, and I think, unfortunately, Boston is one of the centers of the world for that industry. The pandemic's really exposed a lot of the shortcomings of the traditional healthcare delivery system, and the innovation economy is going to be the place where those solutions are going to be created. So I struggle a little bit. There's a real bifurcation. I think people who are able to work remotely are focused on the innovation economy, I think are actually relatively insulated from the COVID crisis. And the venture industry invests in those types of people. So it actually, from what I was worried about in March and April, would be something like 2008 or 2000, 2001, or even further back, 88, 89, where there'd be this absolute paralysis in the industry. It didn't happen. So it really underscores the resilience, I think, of investing in the best, most creative entrepreneurs.
Now, venture funding may be on a pace for a record year, right? But is the industry doing anything more to make sure money isn't concentrated in white male hands? I mean, in the third quarter, venture funding for female founders hit the lowest quarterly total in 3 years.
Yeah, it's obviously an issue. I think there are many steps in trying to address this. The first is awareness. The NVCA, National Venture Capital Association, only in the last couple of years has been very deliberately measuring those types of data and talking about it. So now you can look at a source and you can see that data. Before it was really obfuscated. So I'm pleased with the level of awareness. I do worry an impact of COVID is, and we all naturally, we're in bubbles, we're in smaller communities, that investors are going to invest in people that they already know, and it perpetuates this, it actually retards this democratization of our industry. And so my sense is what we're seeing in the data, why the numbers frankly may be so high, is proven known entrepreneurs are able to raise more money from people they've worked with in the past. And so I think there's an underside to the data that's not great right now, that there's a concentration around, as you said, kind of white male entrepreneurs, which is tragic. I would like to think as we come out of COVID that the forces that we all were exposed to, confronted over the summer into the fall, social forces, that there's a real awakening in our industry. Unfortunately, time will tell. I would also caution, just looking at a quarter, 1 quarter's of data, it's only 90 days. And the third quarter is always a weird quarter because it picks up part of the summer activity. But no doubt there's a problem in the industry. And the industry, I think, finally is measuring it, and you can't fix what you can't measure. And so I'm optimistic it'll improve.
So when you were talking about the 2020, the year in VC funding, it reminds me a lot of when I was writing about the economy and the economy during pandemic, and there are parts of the economy defy logic, right? And what I think in the beginning, we all felt that the bottom would fall out in the economy, and parts of it have held up better than expected. Other parts have fallen, bottom down, hit the bottom. And so when you look ahead to next year, to 2021, do you think the pace of funding will continue at this rate, or do you think it will come back down to earth a little bit?
I think it'll moderate a little bit. An interesting indicator is how much capital venture funds are raising. This year we'll probably raise $40 to $50 billion. And if we're investing at a pace of over $100 billion, obviously those have to come back into line. I focus on the healthcare industry. It's a massive industry running towards $4 trillion of spend. And as I said, what we've seen just in the last 8 or 9 months, we're virtualizing. We're creating an industry that now is more on-demand, real-time. That will be a decade or two of really interesting innovation. So fortunately for Boston, we are in a really interesting kind of hotbed of innovation for healthcare. Our firm focuses on that. So I kind of myopically don't worry about what we're doing, but I think there'll be it'll come back down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So last question for me. When I think of the in-person pitch meeting, that's a really critical part of the VC funding process, and that's gone virtual now. You were explaining to us, to me last week about this, and so how do you feel about that? Describe what it's like now to hand millions of dollars to somebody without meeting them.
It's terrible, and And only now have we started to make a number of new commitments to people we've only met in this format. It's a little unsettling. You can't walk the halls, you can't visit with them, you can't go out to dinner. Ultimately, I think early stage investors need to really get to a place of real alignment around what the entrepreneur wants to do over this journey together, and you're partnered for 5, 7, 10 years. And it's hard to do that in this format. We all struggle with it. We're all making peace with it. What we've done in our process is we've front-loaded diligence around the founding team. And so we're doing a lot more 360 calls earlier in our process. An investment decision process may take, 2 to 4 months. And we've front-loaded all that work. And so we're trying to get to know these people virtually, where in the normal, when we get back to normal, it's much more of an organic process because you're traveling, you're seeing them over the course of those 2 or 4 months. We're trying to push that right up front. And to come back to my opening comment, I think it exacerbates the issue that you tend to back people you've backed before or co-investors of ours in companies that we've worked with before, and you take on faith their relationship. So it does, I think, tend to narrow the circles. Ironically, with this virtual modality, geography, for the time being doesn't really mean anything. So we are investing in companies around the country more actively than we probably would normally, because geography is elusive. But it's caused us to re-architect a little bit how we think about meeting with entrepreneurs. Clearly, if they're local, we try and meet them outside and make those accommodations. The news today from Moderna is terrifically exciting. Maybe we'll be in a more normal state 12 months from now. I think we're all getting more optimistic about that. And over the course of a 6, 7, 8 year journey, if it's another 12 months of awkwardness, I think it's, we should be able to manage that.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, you and I talked about this earlier about how what will be kind of fascinating for business schools, right, to study what happened to those COVID companies. Were they better investment or worse investments when you couldn't meet the founders? I think that'll be absolutely fascinating.
We won't know that for another 5 to 10 years.
Right.
Venture investors kind of hold themselves. They feel with great pride, we're really good judges of talent and, talent fit to the market opportunity. Would we have made better or worse decisions in this format? I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. Anyways, Michael, thank you for your insights. We're going to hang on, don't leave. We're going to bring everyone else back, Stefania and Elias, see if this works. Hello, you're back. Anyways, I have a few more questions I'm gonna ask the three of you. Some of you don't feel obligated, all of you, to answer all the questions. And so sometimes I'll direct some of the questions to individuals. Anyways, first question, and then I'm going to weave in audience questions as well. We had a bunch pre-submitted. They're really good questions. A lot of them about remote, leading remotely. And so I'll get to those in the second half. But first question I wanted to ask is, as leaders, what has been the biggest lesson you've learned in managing during an all-encompassing pandemic, one that just doesn't affect business, but all aspects of life? Go ahead, just jump in. Sorry, just jump in. Oh, but you gotta unmute though.
No, I'm not muted. Am I muted? I don't think so. Can you hear me?
I'm muted now.
Yeah. I was just hesitating. I think it's reaffirmed my faith in humanity. I mean, people want to connect. We are gregarious creatures. We are herd animals, actually, if you look at it from biology. We are herd animals. And you can put all kinds of obstacles in front of us. You can make it so that we're afraid to walk down the street and we don't talk to each other and we cover our faces. By the way, masks work really well in the cold weather. They really do help keep your face warm. But it turns out that no matter what obstacles you put in front of us, we figure out how to connect and how to keep doing and how to keep going. I hate it. I'm lonely. Whatever. I still believe in people even more than I did before.
I would, obviously echo what Stefania is saying. I think that for me has been maybe an advice for entrepreneurs in the audience, right? It's that you as a founder have to evolve with the stage of your company, right? And I'm in a transition, a really hard one of you go from being this doer to becoming a coach, right? And it's like you have to step back, and this remote environment is forcing me to do that and accelerate that, right? Where you trust the team, you don't have to give them the answers, you don't have to them do it your way, and hire for people that are going to lead and own different parts of the company. So it's a very important stage that every founder is going to have to go through. And this has been good because it's forcing me, right, to figure out the work style of each individual, give them their space, go do the things, come back, and learn how to be a coach that is focusing on the performance of the team as a whole and their well-being, right? So it's really that personally has been a big transition, right, during this time.
Maybe I'd just add, Shirley, I think I've been, and this sounds at risk of sounding a little tone deaf, I think our community has been really resilient. You think about what we've gone through for 8 months, not just the pandemic, but the election, all of the social turmoil. And, I look across our portfolio, the entrepreneurs, they're thrilled about what they're doing. Just listen to Stefania and the way she's talking about the market opportunity. So there is a level of resilience that I think I hadn't fully appreciated, but that is tone deaf. Half of our country is in deep, deep, desperate straits. And the risk of this conversation is we're not acknowledging that. And the power of getting through this quickly is essential. And I think we all know that. That's why I love what I do. We're re-architecting the healthcare industry. You can get Mass General-like care in non-traditional settings for people who just can't access that. And all of us on this conversation are doing something to get help to that part of the population.
Our restaurant partners are desperate. I mean, it's just awful what they're going through. And so every order that we're able to get, we feel like not only are we doing what the business needs, but there's some restaurant that's going to survive another day because they got an order from us. It's huge that to see what sectors are really hurting, and if you have a chance to make a little difference there, it's really great. You're right, Michael, it's true.
So this is one of my favorite topics, talking about the divided economy, and I was weighing whether or not to throw in another question. But Michael, since you gave me an invitation, I guess the question is, all of you are actually doing quite, your companies are doing well, right? And yet,
well, I laid off half my people, right? So we have a divided economy, right?
We have a divided economy within, right? But I guess you say it's like, so how long can this go on? I've written stories about, can a divided economy stand? Can you have certain companies just all cylinders, running on all cylinders, and others, about to crash and burn and never to work again. And so how do we, I guess, fix our economy? How do we mend it? This is probably a whole nother panel, but maybe, 2 minutes on it. but I don't know how you in where you sit, or in your company, or where you are, like, how do you play a role in, Stefania, it's very clear for you, right? You're dealing with the restaurants that are hurt really badly, but what else can companies do, or business leaders do, to kind of stitch our economy, this broken economy, back together?
Well, other than any personal kind of charitable things we're doing, we can be advocates for policymakers to strengthen social safety nets, retrain people, repurpose people. We shouldn't abandon half the country's labor force. We need to repurpose them. That will take a long time. I fully appreciate that. But this will be measured in a number of many small victories. And so we have 2 dimensions on our diversity strategy. Access to venture capital, we're measuring how many people we meet that are disadvantaged, and mentoring. And we're recruiting at HBCUs, at Northeastern, at Bunker Hill, to be mentors. If we all start to do that, it will slowly chip away. I actually think, unfortunately, the pandemic, it'll run its course over the next year or so. And so those steps won't immediately address that, but it's a process of continuous improvement. And so, I think we can be advocates for those that actually run those budgets to bolster safety nets. In my world, we've uncoupled the public health infrastructure with private health care. And that is a tragedy, absolute tragedy.
And so one of the safety nets that we can participate in directly as entrepreneurs is we create jobs, pay fairly, pay well for them. There's a really interesting article in the New York Times on Sunday about how New Zealand is working on coming up with equitable pay, not same pay for same work, but equitable pay. So they've used a lot of intelligence to assess what's the right pay for something like caregiving. You know, we pay so little for caregivers, and yet it's such an important job. So what's a job that we do pay better for that's comparable to? And they use many dimensions in which to determine what's comparable. And their premise is, if you are a business that can only afford to pay caregivers $11 an hour, which is what we pay in the United States, then you're not a business. We need to change the fundamental structure of that so that we are able to pay caregivers a fair wage for what they do. and I think having a smaller number of people whom you pay better for being thoughtful about what you're paying and making sure that it's not market with some old measure, but that it's rational and fair by the most enlightened measure you can come up with is something that we as entrepreneurs can do. And yes, you still have to deal with the people that are left behind then. You're not hiring as many people necessarily, but then you have to work in the public sector on upskilling, on not leaving people behind, on training, like Michael was talking about.
I would say that, yeah, I agree with everything. And I think the one thing I can add to this is that we have to be role models and inspire people to take more risk, right? I mean, this is the philosophy of an entrepreneur, is that especially when you're an immigrant, right, or you're a minority, where for us, there's no plan B, right? We only have one option. And so to inspire those that might have an inkling, a talent, and ability to start a business, right? It's like they need this reinforcement, right? That it can be done. It will be possible. And so the more of us that we take chances and we take risks, the more of us will be able to break through to create more opportunities. Because until that happens, right, if they're not coming forward to try it, we will not be able to take the funding. We will not going to be able to take the business opportunity. So we need to help in every angle, right? With policy, with better pay, with us ordering more food, supporting our local businesses, and also to inspire and saying like, look, it's possible. You got to do it. You got to take a chance, and there's no plan B. Go for it, right? Because that's where successes will emerge.
So we have a couple questions related to remote and how do you lead and run a company remotely. And I think one of the questions I have is about innovation is Michael talked a little bit about this. It's being in the same room, having dinner. It's kind of, and Elias, you talked about this too, like bumping into people in the hallway and creating conversation and exchange of ideas and brainstorming. And so how do you innovate and collaborate now during COVID when most of you are sitting at home right now? How do you guys do that? Is there a piece of advice you can give to the audience?
Collaborate within the company, for example?
Yeah, like how do you recreate that magic, that used to happen within the walls of your office?
Yeah, I was just saying that, you read Andy Grove and he says, management by walking around, and we just don't have that. And so some of the things that I'm leaning on, I have part of my leadership team help me pointing out people to go reach out and schedule time, throughout the week to like directly go one-on-one on Slack, call them on the phone, text them, right? Following up when some of our employees, they're going through some stress, right? For example, one of the things that we change is that our meetings, especially the leadership meetings, we have this Rockefeller habit style where the first 5 minutes is about good news, personal or business, because we need to, there's another book called The $1 Trillion Coach, right? Where you want to come into a meeting and not go straight into business, right? And start like, let's go about the KPIs, let's go about this stuff, but really pause and give everybody in the room an opportunity, especially if it's less than 10 people. Just say something that you're really important, that you're really proud of, something great that happened. For example, one of my VPs said, my son got contacts and now he can play basketball outside because the mask and the glasses was overwhelming. It's just like, for us to hear what people are going through in their lives right now, like the refrigerator broke, my nanny got COVID, this, that, whatever it is, right? If we don't have a chance to hear those things, how are we going to be able to text them afterward and find out more about what's happening in their lives? So, and then ideas come up, let's do this. I thought of something, we should talk to so-and-so. I heard something somebody else is going through. And so those are some things that we're starting to deploy, and they've been very helpful to us.
It does put more responsibility on each of us, and it makes the hierarchy of management more visible. So if I'm a supervisor, a first line manager, I try to talk, we have to reach out because you can't wander around. So you have to reach out and talk to your people, and then you have to bubble up. Susie's having a hard time. The whole team is questioning, wants to do this. The whole team loves that, whatever. Bubble it up. And the next layer has to be paying attention, and the next layer. So it makes it a more deliberate effort, and it puts more responsibility on everybody at every level, including the leaves on the tree, the lowest level. We need to talk more. Everybody's got to talk more. You can't sit there being miserable and hope that somebody would walk by your desk and notice that you haven't really looked up and you haven't gone to the water cooler much. Well, we can't tell. You got to say something. You got to speak.
Earlier, as we were talking about, venture firms tend to be quite small organizations, so we're maybe 15 people. Monday, we're together for almost 6 to 8 hours, which is painful, as I was joking with you earlier. And then I've instituted water cooler sessions every other day for an hour. It's optional. Everybody participates. And, during the week, most of us are traveling, so it almost replicates the, kind of the chaos in the office where you randomly bump into people. Just being very deliberate and aware.
We have a lot of scheduled Zooms and a lot of scheduled Slack calls and FaceTime and all that stuff. And then at one point, one of my guys suddenly Slack called me, and I was like, did I have a meeting with you? He said, no, I'm just walking by your desk. I'm just randomly popping in. And I said, oh my God, I can't deal with this. And we tried it, but we discovered it's just too hard. We're so used to now to having everything scheduled that when somebody just appears with a Slack call, you feel like something's wrong. You've lost control of your calendar. So there's some things that didn't work well, but your water cooler sessions, we do it analogously. Those, because they're kind of scheduled, seem to work. Sorry, Shirley, I interrupted. You were starting to say something.
I believe we have like 12 minutes left. We're moving fast. And I've got like 12 questions, but obviously I'm not going to get to them. But another question about hiring. Have any of you made hires during COVID, and have you had to do it virtually? So how do you do that?
I'll say that it's been really difficult. I think we have hired probably since July, like 40 people, and we probably have over 40 recs opening. I've hired like close to 10 VPs and up. We just hired our CRO remotely. I've never met my CRO, one of the most important positions in the company, and we just know each other from Zoom and from phone calls, right? And so it's something that we had to adapt. And I think that I would say one of the areas that has hit us the most is that in-person time helps a ton with the emotional part of the decision, right, of joining a company. And so when you don't have that, you're really relying on a lot of facts and exchanges and not a lot of time to come and visit the office, meet more people, see what the culture is about, go to a dinner, pick a group of people to go with. And so now it's like, tends to be like very factual, like, okay, give me the stats. What is my job? What is this? What is the other, right? And so you really have to spend extra time to share the mission, the purpose of the company, to figure out how to transfer culture. And also to come to the decision of, am I picking this individual, right, for this position that I've never met in person, right? So this is something that was something that we had to do for the very first time. And the other one is that we talked about this early in the preparation, is that we're hoping that by hiring more remote people, right, that barrier has been broken about geography and co-location, that we will have access to more diverse talent. But I think it's been twice as difficult because you now you because you break the boundaries. Now you're like get even more ambitious in hiring the best talent for your company, and so you tend to go for the places that people have had the most experience or the most narrow satisfaction of the requirements, right, that you're looking for. Oh, I need a person that has done this in this job multiple times at this stage in this industry with this type of situation after a downturn during a and so what happens is that we tend to find a lot more whites that have filled those positions, and then you're like, how do you sacrifice, how do you make that decision, that choice to have something that might have maybe a little bit less experience or not done those exact same stages of their companies before. And so it's been really difficult for me, I think, from that perspective, because during the pandemic you focus like, how do we succeed? And so I think that, I don't know how others are going through that, right? But it's hiring remote has advantages and disadvantages like everything, right?
All right, can I move on to the next question in interest of time? So this is another audience question. Who can you trust to discuss your startup ideas with? Who wants to take that on?
So as an entrepreneur who started multiple companies, there is always a fear that if you describe it to prospective investors, that they will steal your idea. Actually, it has happened, not to me, but it's happened in ways that I really believe like it was real. But generally, most people aren't going to get anywhere. Like, you have to believe in the idea. Ideas are cheap. It's execution that's hard. And you have to be really passionate about your idea, about an idea, to get that idea off the ground and to turn it into a company, and then even to make it a success. You have to be infinitely passionate about it, and you have to work very hard about it, and it takes time. So most ideas, you can throw them in front of even the most rapacious investors, and you'll be safe.
Yeah.
The trade-off is you'll get more in having to explain it to people, especially the people who are skeptical, or anybody. You get so much out of it. Just keep talking about it, and just go do it.
Absolutely. I would say just talk about it. I think that people don't realize that most great ideas did not sound great at the beginning, right? If there would have been that great of an idea, many people have already done it. And a great idea doesn't mean like it's easy to do. It's like nothing is easy, right? It's just really hard. It's a long journey. And so I think that just like from the starting of a company to every stage of it, there are no more moats. You have to continually defend your company, right? And create those moats, because everybody has access to like the same talent, the same technology, and the same business opportunities. And so you really have to work hard along the entire journey of the company. And so if that idea that you have was so easy, copyable, and doable, well, it's best that you learn that quickly and not 4 years into it. So it's like, go try it out. Like, nobody's copying it. You got to have a conviction, and you got to figure out how to defend it, right? What advantages do you have that others won't, have easy access to? So go for it.
So if I'm gonna move on. We got 7 minutes now, actually less than that. So if you're running a startup now, your young company, okay, and what should you be doing? What advice would you be giving to someone in the audience? Let's say, what should he or she be doing in the next 6 months to make sure that that their company makes it through these uncertain times? If there's like one thing, we could do a lightning round. Michael, why don't you start?
I think it's really all about the talent that you're able to attract. Great talent attracts capital. So if the question really is, how do I not run out of money? Great talent will attract capital. And then be obsessively focused on a short list of milestones that investors, again, if it's about running out of money, will put value on, and knock those down.
Yeah, I don't know that it's any harder right now than other times. I mean, yes, it's weird because you have to do things remotely, and everything Elias says is correct. It's hard. We hired a bunch of people too, but in this remote time. But it's, there are many hard things that stand between you and your company being a success. The pandemic is just one flavor of them.
But
Don't
Shirley,
don't let it take over your brain.
can I link to the prior question, which was, who would you talk to? Create a small group of, if you're an entrepreneur, of other successful entrepreneurs that can become your advisor. Talk to the investors about people that are, kind of circling you. I think, presume success, aggregate great talent, and people will follow you.
And that's not different in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Elias, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I think more questions. There's more questions.
Oh, all right, I got one last question. Let's see okay. We got one last question, and which is before I got to hand it back to James Jack, but in what ways do you think COVID will permanently change the way you do business?
For us, it's opened up the many states. We will be a far more distributed company than we were before. We had Denver, we had Vancouver, we had Boston, we had Paris, but we had like offices. Now we have people all over, and we're figuring out how to do that, and that's not going to change. We're not going to coalesce everybody back into offices. So it's opened up a lot of hiring opportunity for us that way.
I think we'll travel a lot less. If we're going to board meetings every 6 weeks, we'll go every other board meeting. We'll do this format.
Mm-hmm. That's the structural change in the economy that
and I think that
airlines and hotels are worried about, right?
I think that's very real.
Yes, I think so too. So wait, so if you were traveling every 6 weeks, how often, give us 10 seconds, how often were you traveling, and what is it now for you?
I was probably away 3 days a week. I don't know if I'd go to the West Coast, with 15 hours of overhead to do that for a 3-hour meeting every time. I'll go every other time. I think that'll be a permanent.
We had already done that. We had already gone. We have board members all over. We had already 2 years ago said we'll do every other one in person because of all that overhead. But now, we did a lot of stuff remotely before. I'm not sure it'll be that different.
How much more productive we can be if we reach a hybrid of this format plus traditional.
Yeah, there will be some hybrid. I find it amazing how quickly you can schedule meetings now because people are just more available. I don't know why maybe commuting took too much time as well as traveling. It's much easier to schedule meetings.
You're not stuck on a plane.
Yeah.
Yes. Elias, what about you? You talked a little bit about not going back to the office, right? You're not going to have a traditional office anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be what's going to change is how do we use our offices? How do we use our personal, face-to-face time? That's going to be an interesting evolution where we start to figure out how to practice that, right? Once we have the virus under control. I would say that the other thing it's really about the companies of the future, right? And the kind of efficiency. How we're going to get to, I think we were so stuck in the office time and the number of hours working and sitting in your desk, and very few companies were the 100% distributed companies. But I think that the future is going to be truly an opportunity for us to focus on outputs, right? And to be able to say, are we aligning our companies? The hardest thing for me right now is how do we make sure that we communicate the strategy of the company throughout all the way to every single individual in the company, and how everybody can understand what their piece of those goals are, what the pieces they have to do, and how to accomplish them. So I think that it's going to be a great evolution in management, right? Of how to run companies effectively and really be flexible. I mean, it's fascinating to see our colleagues, kids coming in, people repairing at home, trying to cook dinner, kids jumping, upset, fighting at home, this, that, and we are learning how to work through all those things and becoming more closer personally. I think it's really fascinating. There's a silver lining in all of this, and I think we have to pay more attention to those things because it's going to make us better. Humanity is going to grow and is going to become better than what it was before.
Well, thank you. Elias, Michael, and Stefania. I'm going to hand this back to James Jack from UBS.
Thanks, Shirley. Once again, on behalf of UBS Global Wealth Management and the Globe, I'd like to thank our speakers, Stefania Mallet, Michael Greeley, and Elias Torres, and of course, our all-star moderator, Shirley Long, for a great and really timely discussion. It was really interesting to hear you guys all talk about where you're going with your businesses and overall. I'm a glass half full type of guy, and so I'm excited about the opportunities to come, the silver lining that Elias just mentioned. So please be sure to join us for our sixth and final installment of the Leadership Lunch Series with a special fireside chat with Dan Canary, who's the co-founder and CEO of Mass Bay Brewing Company, and the Boston Globe's Managing Director, Linda Henry. That will be on December 3rd. So again, thank you all for joining us. Be well, remain vigilant, and happy Thanksgiving next week.